5 aunts rented an apartment with another 5 aunts. Now they're tenants. Today, I'm going to recap a 2022 crime thriller film called Bandit. The film kicks off with Gilbert, a man on trial, receiving a prison term of 18 months for counterfeit checks. The judge sends him to jail, but he breaks out after 6 months, fleeing north across the Canadian boundary. As he's on the run, he seeks employment to make ends meet. He considers selling ice cream and fills out an application requiring an identification card, which he lacks. He spots a homeless man down the street, approaches him, and purchases his ID for $22, adopting the name Robert. He presents his newly acquired ID to the ice cream shop owner. At night, he finds a church offering traveler accommodation. Andrea, a lady living there, eventually answers his repeated knocks and offers him shelter for the night. He begins his ice cream selling gig the next day and starts earning, but fate is against him and the company collapses. He heads to a bar to decompress from his recent unemployment. The establishment belongs to Tommy, a mobster and predatory lender who is also in the police's crosshairs. With inadequate proof, the police struggle to bring him in. As Gilbert leaves the bar, he bumps into Snydes, a renowned cop who's tracking Tommy. On his way home, he encounters Andrea and asks her out. After a few months, he has moved in with her. One day, he comes home and learns from a news article about the American government's attempts to find him. This concerns him, and he plans to discuss it with Andrea. While she is in the bathroom, she sees her positive pregnancy test, filling her with both fear and joy. She plans to share the news, but the announcement of her husband's forthcoming business trip makes her hold back. Once Gilbert arrives in Vancouver, it becomes clear his exit was purely to divert the police on his trail and to job hunt. Despite his efforts, he is repeatedly rejected. Amid his despair, he notices an armored car leaving a bank, sparking the first inklings of a sinister scheme, especially after a call with Andrea reveals her pregnancy. He enters the bank without much thought, keenly observing every detail from camera positions to security personnel. Later, he visits a store and rents some clothes pretending to be an actor preparing for an audition. He then goes back to the bank, this time posing as a security officer, asks the bank manager detailed questions about the bank's security measures, and gets a chance to see the camera control room. Having gathered sufficient intelligence, Gilbert alters his voice and places calls to several employees, even dismissing a few of the security personnel on duty. Furthermore, he acquires the knowledge of crafting and applying prosthetic skin, surreptitiously snatching a silicone nose during the process. On the day of the heist, he disguises himself, resolute to commit his inaugural robbery at the Royal Estate Bank. He boldly approaches Jessica's desk, slipping her a note instructing her not to yell. He insists Jessica hands over all the cash in her drawer, subtly brandishing a firearm concealed in his coat pocket. Overwhelmed by dread, she surrenders all the cash she has. Gilbert, however, finds himself without a pocket to stash the stolen cash. Jessica places it in a purse she possesses. His disguise almost falls apart due to the loosening silicone nose, prompting him to hurriedly readjust it. After the heist, he returns the rented clothes and ducks into a restroom to change, transferring the money to a suitcase in the process. Next, he sprints to the airport, facing another hurdle. To clear the X-ray security, he quickly stuffs some of the money into his underwear and heads back to the checkpoint, only to find domestic flights don't require X-ray checks. Upon arrival, Andrea is there to meet him. They proceed to a new house he had previously purchased. He continues to lie about his source of income, attributing their new home to successful family business dealings. In the meantime, the police are busy questioning the victims of the bank heist. Detective Hoffman suspects the notorious gangster Tommy is behind the robbery. Snydes seeks the police chief's approval to apprehend Tommy, but they are unable to proceed, leading them to launch a mission to capture Tommy. Gilbert, on the other hand, requires substantial funds to commit more ambitious heists. He meets with Tommy and proposes a deal, gesturing towards a bank across the street. If he can successfully rob it within 3 minutes, he asks for a loan of $100,000, pledging to repay it with a 30% interest over 5 months. True to his word, he robs the bank, emerging moments later disguised as a construction worker with a stash of cash, thereby earning Tommy's admiration. His heists grow in scale and audacity, with multiple banks targeted and various disguises employed. He routinely takes domestic flights to shuttle between cities, earning him the moniker the Flying Bandit. By now, he has robbed a staggering 36 banks. The proceeds from the heists allow him to indulge in luxury cars and other high-end items. A portion of his loot is safely stored away, and he also secures a membership in an exclusive flight club for the wealthy. After clearing his debt to Tommy, he is presented with an enticing proposal to execute an even more daring heist, a jewelry store robbery. Concurrently, Snydes receives authorization for his operation from his superior officer. They will receive a steady flow of resources to bring down the most formidable gang leader in Canada. Snydes christens this mission Project Cafe. If successful, the team members can look forward to promotions. The squad starts monitoring Tommy's activities, along with those associated with him. Two of his trusted associates, Bishop and Dave, are their initial targets. Gilbert, too, comes under their surveillance. However, they remain clueless about Gilbert's true identity. Back at his residence, Gilbert is taken aback by Andrea, who has discovered his stash of cash strewn across their bed. He admits to having acquired it from bank robberies. However, she demands evidence that he conducts these heists without harming anyone. The following morning, he executes another bank robbery under the watchful eyes of his wife. She is captivated by his skill, but is visibly concerned about his welfare. He returns shortly with his loot. At home, she makes him promise certain things, to avoid getting arrested and to eventually retire from this risky profession. Meanwhile, Snydes is seen keeping a low profile around Tommy's bar, where Gilbert arrives to discuss plans for the jewelry store heist with Tommy. Tommy insists that Bishop accompany Gilbert on this mission. When Gilbert excuses himself to the restroom, Snydes quickly follows him, taking the opportunity to warn Tommy that an arrest warrant looms in his near future. Snydes grows suspicious of Gilbert when he notices residual silicone glue on his face. They contact all the local costume shops stocking disguises. One night, as Snydes is resting, he receives an urgent call from the police station. They've apprehended a drunk driver who happens to be Dave, Tommy's lieutenant. Under duress, Dave spills the beans about Gilbert, the enigmatic individual. Dave reveals Gilbert's alias as Robert and that he's the infamous Flying Bandit. He also discloses Gilbert's plans for an even grander heist. Armed with this information, Snydes immediately heads to the suspected robbery location. His excitement about this case escalates. He begins by questioning the proprietor who lent clothes to Gilbert and alerts the local police about an impending robbery in the city, requesting reinforcements to keep watch over all city banks. In the meantime, Gilbert and Bishop go ahead with their plan, disguising themselves as camera technicians, oblivious to the undercover officers tailing them. Gilbert instructs the store owner to load all the jewelry into a bag, while Bishop guards the entrance. Bishop spots Snydes advancing towards the store, prompting them to make a swift escape from the ensuing police pursuit. Regrettably, Bishop inadvertently leaves his firearm behind at the scene, which is seized by the authorities as evidence. The police persist in their pursuit. Their chase is complicated by the fact that their targets' uniforms match those of several others, leading to confusion. Snydes, showing his shrewdness, triggers the mall's fire alarm, creating a panic amongst the shoppers. Spotting the duo's location, he instructs his team to chase them. Despite their efforts, Gilbert and Bishop manage to escape through a rear exit, and Snydes loses their trail. Subsequently, Gilbert reaches out to Andrea, urging her to quickly pack up as they need to relocate soon, while Bishop returns to Tommy's bar. Upon arriving home, Gilbert finds Andrea going into labor. Without delay, he rushes her to the hospital where their baby is safely delivered. Meanwhile, the police raid Gilbert's now empty residence. Unbeknownst to them, Gilbert, with Tommy's assistance, has secured a new safe house. The law enforcement continues to examine the weapon left behind at the jewelry store. Gilbert spends his days nurturing his newborn child, and before long, Andrea is pregnant again. Unexpectedly, Tommy pays him a visit and they converse on the porch. Tommy inquires about Gilbert's next course of action, hoping to coax him back into their illicit activities. However, Gilbert firmly rejects his proposition. Once Tommy departs, Gilbert checks his rapidly depleting stash of savings. Andrea, however, vehemently opposes his thoughts of resuming his life of crime. The following morning, he slips away while she's still asleep, leaving behind a note with his whereabouts. Upon awakening, she fails to notice his absence initially, but is alerted by repeated phone calls. The caller is Snydes, inquiring about her husband's location. She informs him that Gilbert isn't home. Next, the police contact all the airports in succession, but their efforts yield no results. Snydes stumbles upon an ad in a newspaper and realizes that a domestic airline was overlooked in their search. His team immediately heads to the destination city of the overlooked airline's route. Elsewhere, in a hotel room, Gilbert is meticulously planning his next move. He receives an unexpected call from Andrea, to which he responds with another lie about his activities, asking her to pick him up from the airport at 5. He returns to his old ways and executes his robbery plan flawlessly, just as he did previously. Once his suitcase is filled with cash, he exits the bank, changes his clothes, and places an emergency call to confirm if a robbery has been reported at the bank. Surprisingly, several individuals were attired similarly to him during the robbery, leading to erroneous arrests by the police. He uses this confusion to make his escape. Searching for a taxi, he spots a cop interrogating a mistakenly arrested individual. Puzzled by the absence of taxes, he soon discovers that all taxes have been rerouted to another street. Subsequently, Gilbert notices a car up for sale. Without hesitation, he purchases the vehicle and speeds off. Shortly after, Snydes reaches the site of the robbery and presents a photograph of Gilbert to everyone present. One of the officers mentions having seen the man in the photo flee the scene in a car. Eventually, Gilbert reaches the airport and successfully passes through the metal detector. The airport staff, however, have been alerted about Gilbert's status as a wanted criminal. They immediately reach out to Snydes, who initially requests the cancellation of Gilbert's flight. However, Hoffman advises to let Gilbert proceed, intending to apprehend him upon landing. Agreeing with this plan, Snydes and Hoffman promptly embark on a helicopter flight. Once Gilbert arrives at the destination airport, Andrea is there to receive him. Simultaneously, they find themselves encircled by police vehicles. Gilbert is apprehended in front of his wife and child. At the police station, he is interrogated by Snydes. Andrea is also summoned. She expresses her disappointment with him, upset that he had kept his real name a secret and consequently decides to divorce him. Later, during a visit, Tommy confesses to Gilbert that he was the one who revealed his address to the police. Gilbert is found guilty of committing armed robbery and receives a sentence of 20 years in prison. If you enjoyed this video, don't be shy to hit the like button, and if you disliked it, hit the dislike button twice, just to be sure. It would be best if you watched the whole movie. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe for more videos like this.